The day I decided to divorce Linda was actually my birthday. At the dining table, I joked and asked her if she loved me. Linda gave a fake smile and said, "You're in your 30s, why be so dramatic?" I didn't say a word and glanced at the screenshot on my phone. The chat background showed Linda passionately kissing a man. In the dialogue box, Linda confessed to him, "I've only ever loved you, Mike." Looking back up, I asked Linda for a birthday gift. She replied quickly, "What do you want? Just say it." I took off my ring and said, "A new beginning. Linda, let's divorce." Linda didn't quite process it. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly. She put down her utensils, wiped her mouth, and looked at me with mild annoyance. "Michael, you're like a different person." I took a sip of juice. "What? Can't we have a little romance? 5 years of marriage. Is it hard to hear you say you love me?" Linda stood up, patted my shoulder, and said, "Stop it. You know I'm not into sweet talk. Heard you missed a project recently. Feeling down? I've got a business expo coming up. Want to tag along to clear your head?" I moved away from her hand and continued, "I'll send you the divorce papers once they're ready." Linda got angry. "Michael, are you joking?" "Yep. I've always been mild-mannered. Even in the business world, I've been polite and never used foul language. But with more burdens, my temper's gotten a bit worse." I stood up and tossed my phone in front of her. "You're at fault. Don't push me or it'll get ugly in court." On my phone were screenshots sent by Mike of Linda and his chat. The chat background showed them kissing, surrounded by instigating old classmates. Linda's messages to him were heartfelt confessions, seemingly voiced to text, saying how she could never forget him and regretted marrying me, listening to her parents. Linda quickly explained after seeing the screenshots. "That was a class reunion. I was drunk. You know, Mike, he's always been a jokester. He took my phone and sent those random messages." I laughed. "And the kiss? Was it random too?" Linda paused. "Of course, I was just really drunk." She massaged her brow. "You know who I am. Don't worry, I won't go to reunions anymore." I nodded. "Yes, I know who you are." I opened my phone, looking at the divorce process my assistant just sent me. Linda laughed. "There you go, that's my good husband. Happy birthday, I'm gonna check on the expo." As she grabbed her coat and headed for the door, I nonchalantly said, "Linda, you're a cheater during your partner's illness." Linda looked back shocked. "Michael, that's unfair. I already told you it was just the booze." I swallowed a nutritional supplement and coldly replied, "Save that for the judge. See if they buy it." Linda told me to rest well and slammed the door. I cut myself some birthday cake, taking a slow bite. Just then, Wendy called. Wendy's been a mentor for me. She was my first investor when I went solo. After returning to her family life, she maintained close contact, especially since we've had similar problems lately. Wendy always said watching me is like seeing a version of her life she didn't choose. Now, seeing the message she sent made me want to laugh. Alternate versions. Huh? In terms of post-marriage infidelity, our stories were pretty similar. But her situation seemed much more intense. The photo she sent showed a man and a woman in a car, entangled and undressed. Suppressing nausea, I answered the call. Wendy was emotional, almost crying. "The person I love is out seeking thrill. I'm so disgusted I could puke out my guts." I didn't know how to comfort her, so I shared my situation. "Don't be scared. It's the same here. We can handle this together." Wendy gasped. "What? Linda? How is that possible?" Linda's known in our circle as a good woman. Home and work, that's it. Besides work, she just did fitness. She's seen as a model of integrity. Wendy's shock was understandable. But sensing my silence, she quickly became indignant. "Meet me at the hospital entrance tomorrow morning. We'll find a solution together." I quickly interrupted her. "No, Wendy. I can go with you, but we need to handle this calmly." She heard my reluctance to act rashly and worried we couldn't talk it over the phone. So she invited me out for tea in a few days. After hanging up, I rubbed my temples and lay on the bed. Linda wasn't wrong. I do need a good rest. Just as I was closing my eyes, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mike. We hadn't spoken since college graduation, but ever since he returned from abroad last month, My inbox had been buzzing. Now, another long message. Michael, I'm really sorry. At the class reunion, I was drunk, and I accidentally opened your chat with Linda and hit record. Linda was also drunk, mumbling nonsense. Michael, after that day, time got all fuzzy for us. Back in college, holding each other during parties, classmates taking photos, and then I confusedly set it as my chat background. Michael, Linda mentioned your journey together and insisted I explain it clearly to you. We're really nothing beyond this. Please don't be mad. Let's meet up and apologize together. Another set of excuses filled with drunken blunders. All confused, he recorded and transcribed, set a kissing background, and sent me the screenshot. After all these years, Mike hasn't changed a bit. Still with that righteous facade and pulling off shady antics. Mike brought up college. The three of us were college buddies. My relationship with Linda was pretty old school. An arranged marriage between powerful families, growing up together since childhood. From elementary to high school, our families kept our paths aligned tightly. Linda was always outstanding, and I kept up. Our families couldn't control college, but we both got into the same place through hard work, ranking first and second together. When we received the acceptance letters, Linda's dad brought her to my place. Said our relationship was set, and in a couple of years, when we were older, we'd have the engagement ceremony. Linda's mom joked about college. Who knows what minx might try and swoop in for our rich boy, ruining their engagement. Linda shot back at her mom. I only love Michael. It'd take blindness for me to choose anyone else. Everyone laughed. She pulled me to a quiet corner. Blushing like crazy, I kissed her for the first time. She promised never to betray me. Little did I know, by freshman year, Linda would go blind. She fell head over heels into Mike's web. I call it a web because Mike's not one for bold chasing or sneaky seduction. It's more about creating coincidental events and then innocently explaining them away. Mike and I were roommates. Linda and I were inseparable. Everyone in the school knew we were together. Yet Mike kept having these distinct stories with Linda. Like, on a trip, he rode a shared bike straight into Linda's, bruising up his arms and cutting his forehead. Linda took him to the hospital. Later, she held my hand, explaining, Michael, don't misunderstand, it was just the hospital, nothing more with him. Or when Linda and I teamed up for an activity, Mike signed up as a volunteer. During the event, he spilled the milk tea Linda bought for me, wetting all the materials. He then volunteered to reprint them, dragging Linda to the print shop. He came back saying, Michael, it was just printing some materials, don't overthink it. At first, Linda would complain to me, saying Mike was the most annoying guy she ever met. But after a few incidents like that, she changed. She started bringing extra food, saying, your poor roommate Mike seems to have it rough. Let's give him some charity. Then they got even closer. On my birthday during freshman year, Linda held Mike's arm and told everyone he'd be like a brother to us. Mike beamed. Why just a brother? Call me a bro. Every time he'd say, Michael, don't misunderstand. It's just brotherhood. Later, after playing the brother role for a while, Linda suddenly told me she didn't love me as a partner. We broke up, and she and Mike had a wild fling. But it ended with Mike leaving for overseas with his mentor. Linda's dad was mad at her. Linda stood at my door all night in the rain until her wounds opened. In the hospital, she kept calling my name, begging for forgiveness. My mom pleaded, Michael, everyone makes mistakes. Don't be mad. Dad, however, was stern, saying I was being immature not letting Linda in, causing her to get sick. In the end, I couldn't give up our childhood bond. We got engaged by family arrangement. But now Mike's back, and it seems they're stirring up old drama again right in front of me. Wendy picked this fancy tea house with light flavors, elegant vibe. In the quick couple of weeks we hadn't seen each other, we both got tangled up in new stuff. But she had dark circles and messy hair. I seemed cool in a simple white tea. After a bite of the tea snack, I popped a supplement. Wendy couldn't hold back any longer. Michael, did I hear wrong on the phone? Linda cheating, that's not true, right? I shook my head, you heard right. Wendy didn't get it, that doesn't make sense, why aren't you handling it right away? Aren't you gonna fix it? I calmly asked her back. Wendy, we've known each other forever. Have I ever done something unprepared? With a curious look, I pulled out the prenup Linda's family agreed to. It said if either of us cheated before marriage, the cheater's property would go to the other. Wendy was impressed. Old money folks really do it different. Us new money types would have never thought of that. I gave a wry smile. Binding families tight through marriage, it's all for gain. Old money is scared of divorce messing stuff up, so they come up with things like this. I remembered my mom. When I was young, she'd cry to me about my dad's affairs. Michael, I stay for you and your brothers. Don't want you without a dad. Back then I'd feel mad. But now I'm older and see things differently. I don't want to be just any guy. Wendy handed back the prenup, looking troubled. Michael, I don't have that kind of safety net. I reassured her, think it through. Even though it's a mess, it can't be dealt with instantly. But Wendy cut me off, fired up. I don't have to think. With someone unfaithful, I'm not staying. I finished my shrimp dumpling and wiped my mouth. All right, if you've made up your mind, let's not wait. I'll help you fix this today. On the way, we agreed. He'd solve the problem and I'd check my health. There was a girl at the clinic entrance, looking pale as she came out of the treatment room. Another girl was crouched on the floor, hugging her knees, head low. When our turn came, Wendy gripped my sleeve tightly. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly. I whispered, "What's up? Don't want to go in?" She bit her lip and pulled me to the stairway nearby. With no one around, she sat on a seat, covered her face, and started to cry softly. I gently patted her back, comforting her. "Don't hold back. You can tell me anything." "Michael, I'm so frustrated. I can't take it anymore. If you were in my shoes, wouldn't you feel the same? Plus, I haven't earned my own income in ages. He's run my business down over the years. The only way I could keep him is gone now. Without him, what do I do?" She said a lot all at once. I sighed deeply. "That's right. You should think about these things thoroughly, not just say you'll solve everything impulsively." "Michael, Wendy looked up. "Do you think it'll be that easy to solve?" I chuckled slightly. "It takes planning. But often, it's when we have no choice that we think clearly. That's why I urged you to come. Calm down and we'll figure it out together." Once Wendy was calm, we went on to get our checkups. Unexpectedly, after just a few steps from the elevator, we saw Linda. She was helping a guy with a bleeding leg, waiting in line at the surgery clinic. Both were in workout clothes. The man wore Linda's jacket. It was Mike. "Isn't that Linda?" Wendy's calm suddenly broke again. She rushed straight to them and slapped Mike across the face. "Look, everyone. This is the guy messing with someone else's relationship." The crowd quickly gathered around. Mike hung his head in shame. In the chaos, Linda hadn't even gotten a word in when another girl, holding a water bottle, rushed over. "Who do you think is the side piece?" It got rowdy. "Who are you?" Wendy demanded. "I'm Mike's student, Molly. Mike is a great person, and I won't let you slander him." The tall girl's eyes shone with righteousness. "Recently, I had checked up on Mike since he came back. He's a lecturer at a university now. This girl must be one of his students. Great person. More like scum." Wendy retorted. "She's married and they're so close. What is this?" Her fingers flicked between Linda and Mike as she spoke. Wendy was even more riled than me. The whole scene was pretty ridiculous. "You've got it wrong." Linda jumped in. "I only leaned on him because I hurt my leg at the gym, ran into an old friend, and he was kind enough to take me to the hospital. Don't just jump to conclusions." Linda quickly pulled back the arm she had around Mike just as she turned to the onlookers and said, "This is a misunderstanding. There's nothing to see here, so please disperse." I let out a cold laugh. "Linda, every time I've come to the hospital, you've said you were too busy to come. Turns out you were busy here." Linda walked over to me, concerned. "Lately, I've been stressed with a lot going on. I've been hitting the gym more to cope. Running into Mike was an accident. Last time you were drunk, and this time it's an accident too?" "That's funny," I scoffed, pointing to the athletic jacket Mike had on. "I gave you that jacket." Hearing that, Linda snatched her jacket back quickly. Mike stood in a tight workout shirt beneath. Molly, the student, promptly draped her coat over Mike and handed him the water bottle. Teacher, have some water first. Mike pushed the water aside and approached me. Michael, we were roommates in college. You know nothing happened. Linda gave me the coat because I was cold. Undeterred, Molly pulled Mike back. Teacher, no need to explain. The truth will come out. Michael, let me go with you for your checkup, Linda suggested, taking my hand. These three were like a soap opera. I felt a wave of nausea in my gut. No, you stay here. I pulled free from her hand and walked away quickly. Wendy muttered as we left. I didn't catch the person meddling in my relationship red-handed, but slapping him felt good. I was both amused and exasperated. Wendy sighed. Michael, you hold up under pressure. Aren't you mad at all? I've been angry before. Now it's about solving the issue. I sighed. Mike showing up might be a sign from heaven. Wendy, I've long been tired of things with Linda. When I first married Linda, it was my dream. Despite some bumps, I thought we had made it from high school to the church aisle. I put my all into our relationship. Linda has a slight lung issue, so I've been making her pear soup for her lungs for years. She loves working out, so I join her at the gym whenever I had time. But eventually, I started noticing problems. If I was upset, she'd just buy gifts and never asked what was wrong. At the gym, we'd work out without any real interaction. Even if I tried to wipe her sweat, she'd pull away. She wasn't like this before we were married. After she broke up with Mike, she promised to make it up to me, desperately nice. But after marriage, she cooled off like an engine after a race. The torture inside me was real. I couldn't figure out what went wrong. In late-night desperation, I'd hold her from behind, asking if I could do better, pledging to change. But she just said I was fine and not to overthink. Eventually, I lost hope. In public, we put on the happy couple act. Privately, we were just roommates. Recently, Linda hugged me and said, Michael, we should have a baby. Something to symbolize us. Her mom and mine had both been pressuring us. Hope flickered once more. Would a baby make things better? Before deciding, Mike reappeared unexpectedly. Linda said she was drunk, which is why she kissed Mike. But I know how she acts when she's drunk. In business, she's been drunk countless times. Without fail each time, she stayed calm and composed. So when I saw that photo of her kissing someone, I knew the answer: our marriage wouldn't survive. Linda's so-called drunken talk made me completely clear-headed. Turns out her actions before the wedding weren't to make it up to me. They were to trick me into marrying her. After we got married, she regretted listening to her family and marrying me. My pride from school uniform to wedding dress was nothing compared to her clinking a glass with the ever-unattainable Mike. The night I got the screenshots with Mike, I was up all night. I regret being like a turtle with its head in its shell, struggling in this broken marriage for so long. After leaving the hospital with Wendy, we talked some more. When I got home, Jitsong was already there. Michael. She came over, wanting to hug me. I quickly dodged. Disgusting. She awkwardly pulled back her hand and handed me her phone. Michael, I know I shouldn't have any contact with him. I really didn't expect to bump into him at the gym. As old classmates, I couldn't just ignore him. You can check my phone. I've deleted all his contact info. From now on, we'll be strangers. Then she sincerely pulled out a watch. Don't be mad. This is a rare blue diamond watch I bid on. Here, let me put it on for you. I stayed silent. Linda pulled me to sit down and put it on me. The blue diamond sparkled clearly. Seeing her trying to please me, I felt like I was back on that rainy night. She had come soaked into the hospital, trying to placate me, begging for my forgiveness. I'm not falling for this trick a second time. Linda, cheap things like this I can buy a bunch of with a flick of my finger, they're nothing rare. I said softly, touching the watch. Linda had her head lowered at first. Hearing my words, she slowly straightened up. Her tone cooled. Fine, I'll find something better for you next time. But you should also be careful, don't get too close to that Wendy. She went nuts recently and even hired a private detective to follow Wendy's husband. You should be a good husband, and you've always known how to do that. Then the door clicked shut. After she left, I quickly took out my phone. The surveillance footage my secretary found had arrived. Linda said not to be like Wendy and hire a private detective. There's no need for such trouble. She doesn't know I already bought that gym. I'm the owner of that gym. At the hospital, I had my secretary go and get the surveillance. In the footage, Mike came in with Molly behind him. His eyes searched around. Upon spotting Linda, he hopped on the treadmill next to her. From feigning surprise to looking deeply into her eyes, he switched naturally. Then he moved to a treadmill far from Linda. He kept glancing back at her, and bam, fell on the treadmill. Cut his leg, started bleeding. Molly rushed over to help him, but Linda dashed to his side, brushing Molly's hand away, helping Mike out. Mike clung to Linda. After watching the video, I had to admit, Mike played his poor act brilliantly. I called my secretary. Help me find someone's contact. This Mike's student, Molly. Mike's leg recovered quite swiftly. He never missed a workout, no matter the weather. Each time, he picked equipment furthest from Linda. He still brought Molly along. Molly was attentive to him, bringing water, offering towels, taking care of his every need. After years together, I know Linda too well. She maintained a calm facade during her workouts. But in truth, she wasn't focused, especially when Molly and Mike were chatting and laughing. Linda's movements became stiff, and every time Mike and Molly interacted, he glanced towards Linda. On this stage with 3 players, Mike used another woman to make Linda jealous. Linda took the bait, seething with jealousy. Only Molly was clueless. Linda was becoming more and more distracted during her workouts. And then, one day, Mike stopped bringing Molly. He fiddled with his machine, clearly not getting it right. He looked around, helpless. Their eyes met. They stared at each other for a minute. Then they both stepped towards one another. Linda adjusted the closest machine for him. They exercised side by side. They didn't utter a word. But I knew. The spark was about to reignite. At 9 p.m., the detective texted. Linda and Mike went to a hotel. Wendy grabbed her coat, pulling me out the door. Now we have the proof. Let's go. I'll help you catch them in the act. As I headed to the door, something struck me. Wendy, there's no need for us to go. I have someone better in mind. Remember that girl from the hospital who confidently said Mike wasn't a homewrecker? I had someone dig into their relationship. All the research projects Mike had he passed to Molly. But the credit went to him. Molly's look at him went way beyond simple admiration for a teacher. Going to the gym with him multiple times privately showed their unusual bond. I picked up my phone and called Molly. Hello, sorry to bother you, but I think what I need to tell you might find interesting. At midnight, I got a huge response. A friend request popped on my phone. Molly searched my number and found me on WeChat. Right after I accepted, photos started flooding in. Every photo was of Linda and Mike caught in the act. Molly somehow barged into their room. In the photos, Linda's curled up in the sheets. Mike in a robe. Scattered on the floor were some incriminating tools. The scene was spicy, made my face flush. Molly called me. Sorry, back at the hospital, that was my bad. Today, I just found out I've been taken for a fool by him. He exploited my love for her, squeezing my labor, saying he loved me while getting tangled up with your wife. She took a deep breath. I'm going to expose the true face of this man to everyone. I didn't say much, just gave her a contact. It was the email of Mike's former advisor's spouse. I heard through some people that Mike doesn't have much academic capability. He published several papers abroad by clinging to his mentor. Folks out there have called him an academic plagiarist for a while now. He was sent back by the mentor's original spouse. I called Linda, told her to come home tonight. Linda agreed easily. Glad you realized your mistake. I'll come back tonight. She thought I was backing down. When she got home, Linda looked worn out, probably overwhelmed by the fiasco of Molly barging into the room. I decided to stir things up. I laid out the photos on the coffee table. Linda, the evidence is solid, isn't it? Her face got really red as she croaked out. You really don't want to leave any room, do you? I nodded. Let's get divorced tomorrow. You leave with nothing, and from then on, we'll have nothing to do with each other. Linda rarely got angry. Michael, do you really think you're so righteous? Let me tell you, it's not all my fault. Look at yourself. Do you even know what being a gentleman means? All my life, You've always overshadowed me at crucial moments. In school, you always vied for the top spot with me, and now, even after marriage, you haven't changed. Now, with our relationship in crisis, you still only see money, cold as a robot. Do you want to know why I liked Mike? Because he let me feel the passion of love, made me feel what it's like for a woman to rely on a man. Linda completely lost it. After rattling off all that, she plopped heavily onto the sofa, holding her head. I quietly listened to her rants and then laughed in the silence. Linda teary-eyed asked me, "Why are you laughing?" I shrugged. Laughing because I've just learned what miserable rage looks like. I didn't care to argue back. I'd wasted enough time on her. You can never wake someone up who's pretending to sleep. I handed her the divorce agreement. Linda scoffed at me. "Getting divorced is a relief. I'll marry Mike right away. He's not as cold as you. You go ahead and grow old alone with your money." "Thanks for the well wishes," I said nonchalantly. Linda was infuriated. She grabbed the papers and signed them without even looking. During the divorce cooling-off period, my dad was calling me nonstop. "Are you out of your mind?" I listened quietly as he went on about all the downsides of getting divorced. The family reputation, potential financial disputes, the unraveling of our tied interests. He never once considered my happiness. I didn't say much, just replied simply, "Linda's scandal will soon break out, and the divorce is a shield for us." Taking a step back, "Dad, whether to divorce is my choice, part of my marital freedom. I'll consider your opinion but won't be under your control any longer. Also, tell Mom there's no point in her trying to persuade me. It won't work. All my life, I've conformed too much under my dad's teachings. But now, life proves how ridiculous that was. And Mom, for the sake of the kids, chose not to divorce, maintaining a fragile facade of peace. But she lived her life on eggshells, filled with unspoken grievances. I don't want that kind of life. My life should be defined by me alone." On the day we went to get the divorce certificate, Linda brought Mike. Right in front of Linda, Mike looked awkward. I told her not to do the paperwork all in one day, but she wouldn't listen. Yet when Linda stepped out to take a call, Mike turned smug, rubbing it in my face. "Michael, you lost to me in college and you're still losing now. Thanks for taking care of Linda for so long. Such an amazing woman." I looked at him with an expressionless face, like he was a fighting rooster. After getting the divorce papers, as I left, I smiled at Mike and said, "Wish you happiness. Your wedding gift is on the way." With that, I turned and walked away, messaging Molly at the same time. "The divorce and the marriage are done. Drop the news when it's right." Wendy figured out a way to secure the assets and sorted things out before bringing up divorce with her husband. Her husband scoffed at her, thinking she was all talk. Wendy told me she had scheduled the surgery. On the surgery day, I accompanied her. Inside, outside. One challenge faded away, another hope began to grow. But both reflected the courage to start anew. News about Linda walking away with nothing began to stir on social media. Clearly, she hadn't mentioned this to Mike. Instead, she hired an army of bots online, spreading posts about her and Mike's new marriage, all featuring the same headline, "True love can conquer all." But her so-called true love couldn't wait. Mike angrily called to accuse me. "Michael, don't you have any shame? 100 days of virtue after a single day of wedlock, and you leave her penniless. You played me for a fool." I laughed and replied, "This is just the beginning. Karma is watching. Best of luck with everything." After hanging up, an academic plagiarism thread about Mike blew up online. Someone detailedly analyzed how Mike had been collecting scholarly achievements over the years, either by abusing resources or exploiting students. There was also a PPT, exhaustively documenting instances of him wrecking other people's marriages. That very day, the school Mike worked at quickly released a statement, saying they launched an investigation into it. A few days later, the investigation results came out. The allegations were true, violating academic ethics. He was dismissed from the faculty. In contrast, those earlier true love posts became the ultimate joke. Turns out Linda really did cheat while married. This sent the whole company's stock plummeting. Linda was a board member, but the company kicked her out overnight. Her family is super competitive. Her eldest brother even pushed the family to kick Linda out of the management team entirely. That's when I decided to block both Mike and Linda on everything. Then, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered and heard a familiar voice. It was Linda. We hadn't talked for months, and she sounded way older than I remembered. Before I could say anything, she rushed to add more. Michael, I left Mike. Michael, I'm really sorry. Is there any way you could? I cut her off. Ma'am, whatever happens between you and your husband, that's not my business. Your reputation's shot and your career is a mess. Take a good look in the mirror. Take care of yourself and stop calling me. On the other end, Linda's voice broke, and she couldn't say anything else.